And I remember when I was 10, I cried and asked my father to buy me a Bible.
Wow.
So, yeah, so it was amazing, really. And then my best friend, as I said, became a Christian in university at 19. I became a Christian. And then my parents were very open to the
Hmm.
Lord. But then I was the first one, and then they found the Lord as well.
So tell us a little bit how you actually became a Christian. How did it actually happen for you?
Well, what happened was my friend took me to a Christian meeting. She'd
Hmm.
already primed me up and told
Right.
me that Jesus was God's son and that I needed to be forgiven because I was a sinner. And I told her she was very cheeky. But anyway, I did go every night for a week. And the last night I prayed and I asked the Lord Jesus to come into my life. And amazingly, really, I remember in this meeting, there was lots of young people there, and the pastor asked if you'd like to pray and ask Jesus in your life to stand up. So I stood
Hmm.
up, and then he said, "Would you like to come forward?" And I went forward. And then he said, "Would you like to speak to somebody?" And I mean, you're talking about lots of people responding.
Hmm.
And I talked to this lovely lady. But then I had a thought. I had a thought that I was going to be a preacher, which was crazy because I didn't know what a preacher was. And within about 6 weeks of becoming a Christian, I preached my first message.
Wow. So you accepted Jesus as your savior. Tell us how your life changed. What changed in your life then when you became a Christian?
Well, what changed was I really, all I wanted to know was to follow Jesus.
Hmm.
I just, before I became a Christian, to be honest, I had a happy life before I became a Christian.
Yep. Sounded
I
like it.
enjoyed my job, I had lots of friends, good social life. But when I became a Christian, it was like accelerated. I just
Hmm.
had such a joy in my heart. That's all I wanted to do was to talk to the Lord and pray and read and be with God's people. It was such a joy. And also, what happened, I couldn't stop telling people about Him.
So you said you were happy, you had a good life, you were enjoying your nursing. Was that not good enough for you to be a Christian?
Definitely not. Definitely not. I was not a Christian in any shape or form. Definitely not. Because what's wonderful, isn't it? You don't become a Christian because you sort of do good things. You become a
Hmm.
Christian because you got a change of heart. It definitely wasn't. No, when I became, it was a joy, just touched me. It was so
Hmm.
different.
So that's great. Now you were established as a Christian. You were established as a nurse, I say, working away, and you got the thought to be a preacher. So you said you went to Bible college. Was it Surrey you went to? Was it?
Yes, in Surrey.
That was a big jump for you, was it not?
Oh, it was a very big jump coming
Hmm.
from the valley to Surrey
They
because
understand you when you went down there.
they couldn't. But after a year, everybody could say lovely. So, yeah, no, they couldn't understand the word we said. It was a funny situation. And anyway, because I was a nurse, somebody had broken their toe. Somebody had broken their toe. So
Hmm.
the principal wife said to me, would I ring the doctor's surgery because I was a nurse to explain this person had broken their toe? And now this is posh Surrey. So I got on the telephone now to the receptionist and I kept on saying that this individual had hit their toe. And they kept on saying to me, what? And I kept on saying, hit their toe. Well, I had to hand the phone over to another lady because they couldn't understand me.
So anyway, being a big step now, because that was in the 70s, of course. So when you went to Bible college,
I went to Bible college 1980 to 82.
1980. Okay, that was near the end of the 70s. Okay, now that particular time in Christianity was more like it's a very shall we say, it's a man's world. Uh, there wasn't many lady preachers at those. So
No, that was
how
very
how did
true.
you feel when you went to Bible college? What was it like for you?
Well, you see, the church I went to before I went to Bible college, they recognized I had a gift to preach. So I was always preaching in my local church, not every
Yep.
week, of course. But I was already preaching.
Hmm.
And also I was part of a nurses outreach group. So I was preaching before I went to Bible college. But then when I went to Bible college, people said things like, what are you going to do when you leave Bible college? And I would say, I'm going to preach the gospel in Britain. And they would say to me, well, there's no women doing that, is there? And usually in the Bible college, they send you out to go to different places. And I never asked but I prayed for the Lord to give me opportunity. I never asked, but I
Mm-hmm.
was the only one. I mean, there was 200 students in the Bible college. I was the only woman that was put down to go and preach in the outside churches.
You must
I,
have been very brave because I mean, did you get any animosity from say men who were were preachers at the
well,
time?
well,
And
mainly young women or young men. And I had a situation whereby one of the times I was sent out
mm-hmm.
to go to preach. And when I got there, the pastor said, who was preaching? Because there was two gentlemen and a lady and me. And the gentleman and his wife were the singers. And the other gentleman and me. Anyway, the college people had put me down to preach. So when I got there, the pastor, who was only young, said to me, oh, he said, we don't have women preaching in this church. He said, I'll have to speak to the church secretary. So I said to the pastor, and I was only young. I said, "Oh, it doesn't matter, pastor. I don't have to preach. I haven't got to preach." He said, "Well, I'll speak to the church secretary." Now, they only had put me to stay with the church secretary and his wife. So he rang the church secretary. Then he came back to me and said, "Well, we'll overlook it on this occasion." This you're a woman.
That was very good of him.
But do you know the awful thing was when I preached, it was dreadful. I
Oh.
did so bad. I was so ashamed. So when I go back to the college, I thought I'd better speak to the gentleman that would put me down to speak, the lecturer, and
Mm-hmm.
he'd tell him just in case the college would have a complaint because my preaching was so bad. So it upset me so much. And in Surrey, it was very posh and it was very lovely. And they used to have like a ducks pond. I was so upset. I remember going and sitting watching the ducks.
Oh, bless you.
But I soon got over it. But I did it. I must say I've been greatly encouraged over the
Mm-hmm.
years. But the comical thing was, like, I hope Elim doesn't mind me saying this, is
Yeah.
like I was the first lady for 50 years. It was in the 30s, they were ordaining ladies, but then there was a 50 years gap. And I was the first one after that period of time. And for 10 years, I had credentials which said he, not she.
Wow.
And then after 10 years, another lady came and she complained about it and they altered it to she. But now there's not enough, but there's a lot more ladies coming now. So I
Indeed,
actually
there is.
wasn't ordained until 99. But I was in the ministry all those years, yeah. But God ordains, doesn't he?
Indeed. So was that your only encounter with something like that with the men and preaching and
Well, I had a few things over the way, but to be honest, I think that I was young and I
mm-hmm.
was so fervent that how can I say I just like for example, I was taking these big tents around the country now.
Right?
And then a group of students came one day and they said, oh, they're all talking about you and Marilyn. You shouldn't be doing this. And I said to them, will you keep on talking about it and I'm going to keep on doing it. And I remember another occasion, it was funny really, a
Mm-hmm.
lovely couple from the Bible college that were students the same time as me. I met them about 5 years after we left Bible college and they came and apologized to me. And they said, Marilyn, they really thought I was committing sin because I'm going to preach.
Oh, dear me.
So they apologized and said, we realized it was the will of God. So I had but to be honest, all in all, I mean, gosh, I've been so blessed.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the Lord spoke to me and gave me a word that he would give me more opportunities because I am a woman. And to be honest, I have. Because sometimes people
Excellent.
were looking like for a lady speaker.
Yeah.
Uh, Anyway, God's been good to me. I got no complaints.
Now you were well established as a nurse, and you said you got the call. How did you know that God called you to be a preacher?
Because I just have this desire. I
Mm-hmm.
just not so much. I mean, I'm amazing now. My mum was a good speaker,
Mm-hmm.
even though my mum at the time wasn't a Christian. If there was anything in the village and they would have a debate, and my mother would get up to speak, the room would go silent. She had a gift to speak. Isn't that
Wow.
amazing? Isn't that amazing? But so I always had that type of gift to be able to speak. but also I had this overwhelming desire to win people for Jesus. I
Mhm.
just wanted to tell everybody about the Lord.
Excellent.
And then the Lord just, I've never sort of pushed for opportunities, but the Lord's just opened many doors for me.
Now
I've
you
been
said
very,
you were in very posh Surrey, but then you went
yes,
to Liverpool. That was a big change for you.
I know. When I was in the docks in Birkenhead, I was in
What
the
was that
docks in
like?
Birkenhead, and it was so funny really because it really was rough. But I loved it. I loved it. I love the them type of situations. Yeah, it was great.
So was that? Did you finish Bible college up there, or did you go up to a church up there?
What happened was I graduated from Bible college, and then I was invited to be the assistant pastor
Wow.
because the pastor there, the church about 150 people, and he was planting churches all over. So I was invited to be his assistant pastor and to be the pastor of one of the new churches, which was in the docks. So I'd always loved kids as well. So, and I work with a wonderful man of God, Paul Epton. So Paul said to me, start with children first. So I had the children, about 60 kids in the children's work, and then pioneered the church then. And I was only due to stay there 6 months, but I stayed there longer until somebody else took it over. I've always been a bit of a pioneer, really.
And did you find that hard work, or for working your way up in a church, or again as a
Um,
woman?
well, it's how could I say they didn't know no different because it was starting from zero.
Okay.
But but I tell you what, it was starting from zero. But in those days, it was really funny though, because like it's for example in the bigger church now, the pastor would say, "Would the brethren come forward to pray for the sick and Marilyn? Will the brethren and Marilyn come forward and pray for the sick?" And when I'd go to the regional meetings in Elim, they'd say, "Good morning, brethren and Marilyn." It was funny. It's funny, really. But then, and then also when I pioneered the work, I
Hmm.
wasn't allowed to take communion. What I mean is, I wasn't allowed to serve communion. So what?
Wow.
So Paul, the senior pastor, with my oversight, he was so lovely with me, mind, because he really stood up for me, and he arranged for an older gentleman, his wife, to come to help me to pioneer, and the older gentleman served the communion. I wasn't allowed to serve communion.
Did that go on a lot then in churches in those days that you weren't allowed to serve?
No, it was only a thing because I was like the first woman for 50 years and I didn't quite know
Wow.
whether I should or whether I shouldn't. Because it was funny really, because in the big church one morning, a gentleman got up and prayed and told the senior pastor and I off in a prayer. Basically, if we were
I've been there. Yes, I've heard them.
yeah. So it was a bit like that, but and like the first mission after I did that, and I started to go from church to church, church to church. And I mean, I would go to churches that couldn't afford an evangelist, so I would go for
Mhm.
nothing. So they had me for nothing.
I see.
I would go
Okay.
from church to church to church. And I went to one church, and down the south of England. Where was it now? It was near Bournemouth. And basically, when I got there, they said, "Well, don't think this is going to work because we had an American woman here so many years ago and it didn't work then. So we don't think it's going to work now." But after we had the mission, the leader graciously came to me and basically said, "Marilyn, I know God's going to use you."
Wow.
But how can I? I was so young and I was so on fire. I didn't take much notice really. I just
Did you
carried on.
did you feel that when you did go preaching to these churches, did you feel you had to prove yourself more than a man?
Um, no, no, I didn't really.
Okay.
I'm a very, as you have heard me speaking, I'm very simple in my preaching. I'm a very simple evangelist. No, I'm not a Bible teacher. So I never felt that really. And what I love is, well, 'cause I notice some ladies, they want to preach like men. Well, women talk different to men. No,
True.
I never felt that. I just saw, I'm just very simple in my application, really.
Same as Jesus, he was very simple in his application as well. Now, you said you got saved. You were the first one saved in the family.
Yeah.
How did that affect your whole family? And when did people start coming to know Jesus in your family?
Well, we were like a close knit, loving family.
Hmm.
So that didn't change, but it took a little while. It took a while
Hmm.
for my parents. It was a few years for my parents really found the Lord. And what happened was we had a terrible flood. We had 8 foot of flooding, and
Wow.
our home was totally ruined. And then what happened was the elder from our church came and my dad had gone to hospital because of it all. Went to see my dad in hospital, led him to the Lord. And my mum gave her life to Jesus. My aunties gave their life to Jesus. I used to take a couple of carloads to church every Sunday of
Wow.
people that had given their life to Jesus.
Okay, so yeah, but then of course your dad died. How did you feel when that happened?
Well, loving my father was so lovely. And it was very sad, very sad,
Hmm.
very sad, but very proud day.
Yeah,
Because I knew my father had really come to know Jesus and he loved the Lord with all his heart. And he was a
praise God.
very shy, quiet gentleman. But when he came to church, he was like he was just talking to everybody. It was amazing, really. The Lord really saw us through. My dad had an accident and died. And so that was a very sad time, but the Lord saw us through.
Excellent. Now, through your when you were telling us about what you did, you spoke a lot about forgiveness. Okay,
Hmm.
did you have a lot of forgiving to do, or was it something that the Lord laid on your heart?
For me, oh yeah, absolutely. I needed to be forgiven because I've done all bad things, like we all have done, haven't we? I've, you hear different stories. I've had a very type of, I so, I've had a very type of ordinary life, really.
Hmm.
I haven't had sort of. I thank the Lord. I've never done different things, but yeah, I've had to ask the Lord's forgiveness. Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so glad that I asked the Lord to forgive me, and I've known His forgiveness, and I
Yeah,
love as well because the Bible speaks of keeping short accounts.
I
So,
see.
I often say to the Lord, Lord Jesus, please forgive me if I've done something wrong or this. So, yeah, definitely have needed a lot of forgiveness.
Excellent. And how important is prayer to you? Because you did a lot of prayer as well. How important is prayer?
Oh, absolutely key. I,
Hmm.
I keep for me, I'm only still, I'm sure, in the ministry preaching today because of prayer. Not only myself praying, but the kindness of friends who pray for me. Prayer is a huge key.
Excellent. Now, when you were young, growing up in school in that little village in a little small family, did you ever dream you'd be traveling the world preaching?
Absolutely not, because my parents never went to London. We never traveled anywhere. We never went on holidays. Only once in my life. We never were travelers. It was
Wow.
only, since I came to know the Lord.
So, how far have you traveled? Because you mentioned Uganda as well. How far have you actually traveled in preaching?
Yeah, I traveled many different countries to Europe, preached in Switzerland, France, goodness knows where, Nigeria, Rwanda, many different countries, India. Yeah, lots of different countries.
I love the way you mentioned the Rwanda in amongst all those countries.
Yeah, yeah, and yes, sounds like Rwanda, Rwanda,
Oh,
Rwanda.
sorry, I thought you said Rwanda,
I
the
know,
Rwanda Valley.
Rwanda. Yeah, yeah, mostly East Africa, but also as well Nigeria, and yeah, India, many different countries. Yeah, we
And
never lost Europe.
are you still preaching at the present time?
I am. I am still preaching. I preached last Sunday in the Rhondda, and the Sunday weekend before I preached in West Wales in Cardigan. Yeah,
Wow.
I preach a lot still.
And looking towards the future, have you got any plans or anything or ambitions?
Well, to win more people for Jesus and to train more people. I'm based in Ebbw Vale, and we have a training sending centre. And
Wow.
I work with a wonderful couple, and they're the principals, and we have 50 students, and we're 50 students, some online, some in person. And actually, 31st of July till the 4th of August, we're going to have a festival of hope in Marquise. We're going to have 6 acres of ground, and that's going to be our next adventure of preaching the gospel for the community, Festival of Hope in the Valleys. So to be
I
honest, I'm
think
always on mission and
I
always
think I've,
training others.
I think I've seen that advertised actually. I think Des advertised that one.
Oh, good, good,
This-
good.
I think
Yes,
he did.
so
Yeah, Festival of
yes,
Hope.
we were given an amazing building. It's a charity. It's registered charity it is. And yes, we've got a lot going on, but that's my main thing, is winning people for Jesus and training others.
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned, of course, that you had a lot of people staying with you. Do you get involved with like drug addicts and people like that a lot?
Yes. I've always had a heart for the broken. So I've had a
Mm-hmm.
big connection with Teen Challenge over the years, and now with Hope Hope Rehabilitation Centre, which is linked to the Victory Church. So I
Right.
have over the years had a number of young ladies who've come out of addiction rehab and come to stay with me, and they've come as my apprentices, and many of them now are Christian leaders.
Excellent. Well, it's been fantastic speaking to you, Marilyn. You're very resilient. I won't ask how old you are because I know you said 1970. I got saved in 1972, so I have a good idea, but I won't mention a lady's age.
Oh, well done. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Anybody looking at the screen will know how old I am.
You're young in the Lord. That's the main thing. Now,
Absolutely.
you said yourself one of the greatest decisions you made. I'm going to ask you the same question again. We asked this of all the people who come on here to give their story. Of all the decisions you made in your life, what was the best decision you ever made?
To invite Jesus Christ to be my savior. The best absolute ever to follow Jesus.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. It was fantastic speaking to you. And with that, I'm just going to invite Alan back in.
Thank you, George. And thank you so much, Marilyn. Thank you for sharing your story and how God has used you. And I pray you will continue to use you. And may we indeed see many more young evangelists out in our country. That's what we need. And many, many people coming to Jesus. I pray God will give you the strength and the ability to carry on doing what you're doing. And we know that Jesus is coming soon. And we want to see many people come to know him before he returns. So bless you in all that you're doing. Thank you for being with us today, to watching this story. Also, you can go to our website, Lifestoriesworldwide.com. There you'll find lots of information which will help you. You can also go to our website, to our YouTube channel, Life Stories Worldwide. And there you can watch stories from previous Mondays, people who've gone through all types of experiences and whose lives have been changed. But thank you so much for being with us, and may God bless you. May you know the peace of God that passes all human understanding, and may the joy of Jesus fill your heart. Bye, everyone.